All right, so we're live, and this is the third episode of SO Rev. We've got for you here today a conversation about contact. What is contact? Well, that is after there's disclosure, we have some version of open contact. A lot of this stuff is hypothetical, but we've got the man, the myth, the legend himself, Stephen Bassett. I call him El Jefe Bassetto.
Really?
And
That sounds made up, but go ahead.
no, it's not at all, man. I've been calling you that for years. But
Okay.
basically, he's going to talk to us about disclosure, but then we're going to expand on that and think about all the other things that could possibly come after disclosure and what it means for mankind, what it means to us as a species. And we will explore that through some mixed media. We're going to show you some clips of some famous contact related media, films. The films that we're discussing today, a lot of them are available on Amazon Prime for rent or purchase. And they're also available probably on Netflix, depending on which area you're in. The films we're discussing are The Day the Earth Stood Still, 1951, and 2008, because they're a little bit different.
My favorite.
Okay. And then we're discussing Arrival with Jeremy Renner and Amy Adams. We're also discussing, very briefly, Independence Day. Not my favorite film.
This is your pick. It was yours.
But not as good as Independence Day Resurgence. That was
that one. No, that one.
Yeah, that was.
No,
that
Resurgence. He's talking about Resurgence. He wants to do the second
one. Is the best. Absolutely the best.
I'm talking about Resurgence. The second one's horrible. Anyway, so, and then
They're the same one. The second one and Resurgence are the same movie.
They are. It's just a totally like sad attempt to ask for more dollars at the box office. But
there you go.
The last one we're going to talk about is Star Trek First Contact. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
You know, Bassett has been prominently featured on a brand new Netflix show. We were speaking to Netflix before, that is called Top Secret UFO Projects Declassified. And I watched a bit of it last night. You know, it's a lot of stuff that we probably already know about, but I think it's very important for the masses, a lot of Netflixers that are not exposed to a lot of the history of these UFO events and the credibility behind them. So I'm excited for it. I'm excited that Stephen, you've been in many of my documentaries, and you're a fan favorite, man. You're a good, articulate, and passionate guy on this subject, an activist, and I really appreciate you. So let's talk, before we get into contact, let's talk about what's going on with disclosure. What was the sort of last little nugget that came out of the media to the people?
After the public report dropped from the DoD O&I on June 25, which was not particularly spectacular, but didn't expect it to be. They don't want to give out public information, so they just put out something to keep people happy. The news cycle on that sort of stopped, and it really dropped off. Very little news, some, but not the odd stories, but a fraction of what we were getting. Because not long after that 2025 drop, the big news about COVID-19 started hitting, and the variant, and the numbers went up. So the disclosure process and the government action is off the table for now. And that's okay. There's also 3 huge bills that the Congress is having to take up now. And when the Congress takes something up now, it's a big deal because normally it can't do anything. So not much has happened. If I were to open my articles, I'd probably find something. There's been a couple of sightings, but nothing major. Now, that could change at any time. Where we are now is the 4 key committees in Congress, House and Senate, have had a 400-page report. By the way, according to Lou Elizondo, who saw the report, it was not 17 pages. It wasn't 73 pages. It was 400 pages, which sounds appropriate. There's no reason for him to lie about that. And he actually saw it. He didn't copy it and hand it out because, well, it was a classified report. They've had for 20-some days. So that's a lot. They're reviewing that. Expect something to happen soon.
So everybody was expecting 400 pages on June 25th, right?
Yeah.
But
No. Well, whatever they were expecting in the public report, it was disappointing. 400-page classified report, which was delivered on the 16th of June, early. That's what's important, not the public report. Forget the public report. So one member of one of the committees, actually a subcommittee chair, Andre Dawson of Indiana, he has said we're going to have hearings. Okay, great. But he's a subcommittee chair. So that doesn't mean that much. The next thing that's going to happen is a major committee chair or ranking member is going to say they're going to hold hearings. That's the next thing that will happen, by and large. Will they wait 90 more days for this, quote, follow-up report that the DOD, they don't have to wait 90 days, and they probably shouldn't. So that's what to expect. However, thanks to, well, I don't want to go there. Let's just say that the pandemic is
go there. Go there, bro.
No, I can't go there. The pandemic's not going well for us, all right? And as a result, I could see things getting so bad that bringing up hearings on the ET issue is simply going to be put off. You're not going to be able to do it. You can't hold hearings on this on Zoom. You got to have it in person. The witnesses have got to be in Washington. Would be nice to have an audience. If things get much worse, that cannot happen, and so nobody's going to call for hearings. So right now, the timing of the disclosure process is in the hands of the American people and how they handle the recent surge in infections and deaths. We'll see how it goes. It's certainly out of my control.
So let me just ask you something. I mean, you said that Lou Elizondo saw 400 pages.
Yes.
And, we got 18.
No, we got 9.
9.
No.
Sorry, we got 9. We got half
Only
of
6.
18.
Only 6 were substantive. 2 appendices and a cover page.
Yeah,
we got
2 were
6
just
pages. We got very little, almost nothing.
Yeah. So
Mice nuts.
why are we getting mice nuts? Why are we getting those dropped on our chin? Like, is there any kind of way that we can get more out of the 400 pages that apparently Lou Elizondo, those sound like big nuts.
Oh, yeah, sure. Look, the Pentagon did not want to release anything publicly. It's not their job to release public information about this issue. Their job is to defend us and classify stuff in order to defend us. But Rubio, for political reasons, I think, threw public report in there. Why? Because by doing that, he guaranteed a huge amount of news coverage. You give the press a date when the government has to deliver a report, you're guaranteeing coverage, and we got tons of it all the way leading up to 25. So, but the Pentagon didn't want to do that. They're happy to give the classified material to the Congress. They feel that is their job, and let the Congress decide what to do with it. And so he kind of threw the DOD a curveball, and the way they handle it was, okay, we'll give the classified report early. They'll have lots of time to review it without press breathing down their neck. And then all the focus will be on the public report, and we're going to put that out. There's not going to be much in it. And people will complain, but so what? What matters is the classified report. If we're expecting the DOD to start dumping out massive analyses of this issue to us, we're living in a dream world. The Congress will do that, either formally or by leaking it, which the Pentagon, I'm sure, expects to happen and probably welcomes. Because if the leak comes out of Congress and not the DOD, they're perfectly happy with that. So it's all well. Everything's good. And we're ready to go, except The pandemic is raging, okay? And by that I mean many are going to die. That's not good. That's bad for the government, bad for the American people.
All right, let's pretend that's not even happening.
Yeah,
Let's not talk about it because I don't want to like get my
But it affects
channel banned or something.
It affects this work. It affects.
Speaking of the day the Earth stood still, I'm Brandon Thomas, by the way. I run a show called Expanding Reality. Thanks for introducing me, Darce. Good man. Bassett, good to see you again, brother. It's always good to see you, man.
I'm sorry, man.
So we're working out the kinks. It's our third episode. Don't worry about it. So welcome, everybody. You can find us on YouTube, of course. Please like and subscribe. Tell your friends. Write us in at media@Occult Journeys for movie suggestions. And if you want to tell Darcy how good he looks with that new light that he's got going there, it looks good, dude. There it is.
Is that one of the circular lights? One of those?
You rocking a ring light?
Yeah, it's a little ring light.
Okay. All right. Well,
got it at Ross for less, I think. Yeah.
Okay, that's good.
Ross for less. Did you say the name of the store and part of its slogan?
For less.
Yeah. Okay.
Ring.
Yeah. I'm going down to McDonald's. I'm loving it. You know. So you describe places you're going.
How bad is that ring? I'll tell you how bad. His beard is actually blonde. That's how bad that ring is.
Right. Yeah. It's a good
$9.95.
My beard is.
But he got it for less, and that's all that matters. Yeah. So, Darce, talk about the first movie, man. Where are we jumping off at? Are we doing the day the Earth stood still? Let's get into it, brother.
You know, Stephen mentioned just a little bit earlier that, you know, the government. It's not the government that controls this issue. It's really the Pentagon, and the Pentagon doesn't care about, you know, releasing classified information to the public. So I just want to, before we go into this contact stuff, because we will touch on that, it's partly a theme to some of the content we're going to be discussing. Do you think that it's justified that the Pentagon shouldn't release much of this declassified or classified material? Sorry.
Well, first of all, if it's classified, they can't release it. That's the law. Okay, so we're going to break the law.
I'm saying the actual material that's in it. Do you think they should declassify it and they should actually allow us to know, you know, the goods?
The Congress. It's Congress's job to decide about that, not the Pentagon's. Actually, it's also the president. In other words, they're doing their job according to the rules. Now, are they going to bend the rules in order to get stuff to us? I think they may have a little bit with respect to Lou Elizondo and the tapes, the gun camera clips. But no. Look, everything is going just fine. We've got the classified report. Now Congress can take action. The DOD's off the hook. The DOD has also got themselves off the hook by saying they're going to deliver even more in 90 days, which means that Congress, for God's sakes, do something, because we don't want to deliver more in 90 days. So we're fine. It's all good. No problem.
But isn't it like commonly known in the ufology research field that, you know, the president doesn't actually know half of this stuff. He's just read into it. So why would he be an important person on this subject? You know,
well, he's an important person because by law he can declassify anything he wants. He doesn't have to know anything about it. He can say declassify that. But again, the president's not going to do that. That's obvious. That's not constructive right now. What has to happen is that the Congress reviews the classified report, decides that the material in it certainly justifies hearings, and then arranges for military witnesses to come in and start testifying to aspects of the report based on questioning. Now, the questioning will be such that they'll ask questions at open hearing relative to the report, but they won't violate the classification status, and neither will the witnesses. The witnesses will say, I can't answer that because that's classified. I'll do it in closed session. And so it'll kind of go back and forth. And that's the way it's supposed to happen. When there has been sufficient testimony that is very compelling that what we have here is an extraterrestrial and otherworldly phenomena, then the president can step in a safe political way and end the truth embargo. That's the way it needs to play out. That's where it's heading right now, and I'm perfectly fine with that. Someone would say, well, we know there's an ET presence already. Why don't they just do it? Well, that's not the way the real world works. There are a lot of moving parts. There are a lot of people's careers on the line. There are agencies, reputations, and so forth. And so this finally needs to be conducted in an appropriate way. And the fact that it's not 75, maybe 30 some years late doesn't mean let's just cut corners. So they're following the rules. Rubio started the ball. The Pentagon has finally delivered. The key members have got a lot of classified material to make a decision about. There's already been one maybe significant leak that went to Richard Dolan. Expect more. And we're just waiting for a situation that is conducive to holding hearings. And history has thrown us another curveball. We're in the middle of a massive pandemic. And in the middle of that, we're also trying to get major bills passed. And that's
the infrastructure bill where they're going to totally nuke Bitcoin.
And the Voting Rights Act.
Not stoked about that.
These are not trivial bills.
Okay, so with that understanding, then, do you think that the people have a right to know what's going on? I mean, you've been an advocate for disclosure for over 24 years, so of course you're a proponent of that people have the right to know what's going on in the skies above us. Now, what about the fact that the government has definitely, if they know anything at all, they've known it for decades. So why now? Why does now mean the time that they finally trust us with this information that they've known for a long time?
All right, well, I'm 74. Okay, in a few years, I'm probably going to get sick and die. All right, and I'm probably asking, why now? Why now? You know, it's because I'm 74 and soon to be 79 and 80 and 81, and after many, many years, my ability to maintain fully function starts to erode. My immune system starts to decay, and I can't keep up with all the ills, the air, human flesh. Same thing with the truth embargo. It is also 75 years old, and it's worn out. It's tired. It's been attacked. It's got wounds. It has open sores. And so the reason now is that it's finally just kind of run its course, and it's now vulnerable to the kinds of pressures that have been out there on it for many years, and so it's going to expire. That's the simple way to answer that question. The more complicated way is to address the emergence of the To the Stars Academy, the New York Times articles, the change in media coverage, sea change in media coverage, the coming on board of a whole number of agencies and people that have decided, yeah, it's time. All of that has essentially created a critical mass. And so now we're just waiting for the damn critical mass to explode, giving us disclosure. That's the second, more complicated answer.
Okay. You happy with that answer, Brando?
Is that working for you, Brandon?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I was just curious about your opinion on it. And yeah, no, you said it. That works. I'm on the other side of all of this, of course, and we know this. We had a conversation on my show. Thank you so much for coming on. And I just look at the world completely differently.
Wait. Tell me about your opposite.
Let's hear it. I want to hear it.
I want to hear it. What's the other side
so,
of this? I'm dying to know.
I probably agree with about 100% of it, but go.
So I think it's a control mechanism. I think if nothing else, they are only rolling this out because they need it to hide something else. I mean, perhaps like the election being overturned here in a few weeks or something like that. I mean, these things are usually smokescreens or distractions. People from a grassroots level have known what this is for a very, very long time. And that's why we have the kind of research that we do, not from our government telling us what it is. I think they know exactly what it is. I think they will use it for their benefit to institute some sort of new world order. You hear this being talked about a lot. You see with this Great Reset, Fourth Industrial Revolution, stuff like that. There's some deep rabbit holes that I've definitely gone to that have put some pieces together for me, evidentiary, and you can see this stuff. And it's just kind of changed the way that I look at all of these things. It's a playbook, and it's a playbook ran by mobsters because that's what our government is. It's organized crime.
That's not the other side. That's another interpretation of the same thing. All
well,
right.
But where we differ is the motives in which we think that this is being carried out. Like, you think it's an altruistic stair step. It's got to come out this way because that's the way it's got to be done because we're following rules. Congress can't, whatever. But what I think is that it's only being used as a manipulation tool to institute more control. You look at things like Project Bluebeam, which is like one of my favorite things, and it's been coming up a lot lately, especially now that the conversation about disclosure has gotten a lot more serious. And it seems like something like that is more likely in my mind, as well as this thing that you keep talking about that we weren't going to talk about. I'm the complete opposite about it. Same thing. I think it's being completely rolled out to just retain more control, man, and take over. That's it.
Well, you're candid and frank with your opinions, and that's good. But let's talk about disclosure. I was talking about the process. I wasn't talking about the motives. I wasn't talking about the motives. The motives of the DOD are beyond my comprehension, though I can guess. The motives of the Congress. Well, there's 535 members of Congress, 70 members of those committees. Every one of them has a slightly different motive. So I'm not going there. You're welcome to go there, and it may be these motives are exactly as you say. My job is to get disclosure, not to somehow shape the motives of multiple agencies and members of Congress to fit some mold. Disclosure. If it comes, and that's a good thing. Then we may have to deal with the motives behind some of the players, but at least we'll be doing that in the post-disclosure world, as opposed to running around in the dark, bumping into the lawn chair furniture.
So let me ask you this, and this is probably the most honest question I'll ever ask anybody.
Really? Okay.
Why do you? Okay, that's a two-parter. What do you think? Do you think that there are extraterrestrials or other types of entities that are controlling craft intelligently that are visiting the Earth and possibly have been for a very, very long time?
Absolutely, it's certainty.
Okay, cool. So why do you feel it's important for somebody else to tell you that that's accurate? Like, you know that, so why do we have to have the government tell us? Here's my point on this, is I think that if people are smart enough to figure this out, those are the people that are supposed to know that it exists. The people that aren't, just aren't. They don't see it. They don't see what's there. It's just we live in a dichotomy, man. Some people want to know how the magician does the trick. Some people are just happy with it and don't want to know what's behind the curtain, you know? I think that may be it. And I don't think that it takes the U.S. government to tell us what we already know about the phenomena. So I think that this push for disclosure, again, might just be another mechanism of distraction or control. They're like, yeah, look over here. You're going to get disclosure. And then, you know, look over here.
You got to distinguish between the personal level of this and the institutional level. All right. For instance, I had personal opinions about certain wars that we've had. All right. We should be in that one, or we shouldn't be in this one, or what have you. Others had personal opinions.
I bet we share that.
But those personal opinions is not what made the decision about whether we go to war or don't go to war. That decision is made by the United States Congress. All right. And then, of course, the war itself is carried out by the United States military. So, in other words, what the government does has significant impact on institutions at minimal, and eventually on human beings. Okay, let me give you a simple example. Because the government, let me another analogy. Let's say that the United States government says, no, we're not going to go to war in Vietnam. But there's a lot of people out there that think we ought to go to war in Vietnam. And so they decide, okay, we're going to form some militias, we're going to get together, we're going to hire a boat, we're going to sail over there and wage war. No, they're not. That's not going to happen. So what the government does and says about war has a very significant impact on whether there's a war or not our opinions. Same thing with the food embargo.
Let me just, I'm going to pop in here.
So I'm just going to slide one layer on top of there, Brandon, and just say this one thing. If they don't go to war in Vietnam, then Lockheed and Rand and all these corporations are going to be like, what are you doing, man?
Yeah.
We were expecting to make a lot of money, okay? And that's not fair. We've got families that we need to rise up and take over the rest of the planet. And you're just going to rain in on our parade and not have the Gulf of Tonkin event happen now? Look, there's fake submarines out there that are sinking our ships. And we need you to report that to the public right now.
Like in World War II when they had the inflatable tanks. But my point on this was that it... damn it, I lost my point, Darcy. It was right in there.
I didn't finish.
Here it is. Here it is. Hang on. I know, but to the point that you were saying, the example that you used is a psyop by the government. The Gulf of Tonkin never happened, and the government, or they faked it to get everybody into the Vietnam War. So the example of the thing that you were trying to disprove this idea on actually has the idea wrapped up into it.
No.
Beautiful. I love it. I just wanted to point out the execution.
You're missing the point. What I'm trying to say is, I'm not trying to get into the granular history of the Vietnam War. I'm simply going to say I could have been pick another war. I don't care anyway.
No, the one you picked was
government
perfect.
decides whether we go to war or not a bunch of people that think we ought to go. And because the government has not acknowledged the truth of the ET issue, institutionally, that's had huge consequences. It's prevented civilian research and public civilian research. It's not taught. The issue is not taught in any colleges and universities. All right. It affects the press coverage. All right. It has impacts across the board. And so you might say, well, I already know there's an ET presence. Therefore, why do I need the president to tell me? Because until the president confirms it, not just to you personally, but to the country, which includes a whole bunch of people that don't know there's an ET presence, it's not going to be treated properly. It's not going to be taught. It's not going to be researched in the open area. And so the consequences of disclosure are quite profound. So I'm seeking disclosure, not because I need that confirmation, but because it is the right thing to do with respect to the institutional process of running the United States.
Yeah, it's horseshit. The institutional process of the United States, and especially in science, this is a pseudoscience at best. There is actual evidence out here, and no scientist can put their name to it because they won't get funding or their tenure will get pulled. It's not recognized as a science.
Why do
This
you
is
think
not
that
an
is?
open study.
Look at what's happening to Avi Loeb. Look what happened to Avi Loeb. Look what happened to Dr. Johnny Mack, your friend who got you into this.
Take your pick.
He was being chased with, torches and forks by his own administration in Harvard.
So scientists are just like politicians. They can be bought. So just like what's going on right now that we disagree with, but we're not going to keep talking about, that's the same thing that's going on here. And then also you have this in the scientific study of the physics of anything like this. You know that they're doing it backdoors, but they won't let the mainstream science in on it. They will parcel the idea or the allegedly, right, from the Roswell crash. That's where we got fiber optics. That's where we got a few other technologies. So these kind of things, the microchip, I believe, the motherboard, and these kind of things were peppered out to benefit humanity, but in small little pieces leaked from think tanks is the conspiracy. That's just the idea. So this is the thing, right? And I think, honestly, we're never going to get that technology to benefit humanity because you can't meter it. That's the problem. Tesla had this shit 100 years ago.
Never is a long
time. Can't
time.
meter it. So just like what they talk about with that 0-point energy thing, that's what we really want. That's what us in the UFO community wants. That's not what your U.S. government wants. And we know that. The lobbyists are there, man. That's what's controlling this country. It's
so
an
oligarchy. Are you saying that there's nobody inside, within working in our agencies and military services, nobody that feels that the people should know more about this or have a right to know?
I don't think they care. No, I don't think they care about us at all.
Nobody cares. Nobody.
Well, no, there might be a couple of people, but they're not going to talk. There's families have been threatened. People end up getting suicided just for pointing out actual facts with actual documents. So if they come out and say stuff like that, they're on the chopping block. It's possible.
That scenario is probably most possible when it comes to something that's going to provide energy at a cheaper cost than fossil fuels.
Or free completely.
Yeah, free. Basically the free energy, if you believe it. But I think the one thing that's most important to point out here, just from my perspective, and I have a lowly perspective as a, independent researcher, goofball filmmaker.
Dope ass filmmaker.
Gracias. Basically, if you look at To the Stars Academy, right, which you do tend to trumpet a bit more than others, Steve, their whole goal, Kit Green, Hal Puthoff, Christopher Mellon, was to put this UFO subject front and center, and they asked for $2 million in funding, and one of their missions was to eventually make exotic technologies that are not in the black, but in the white, in the actual public eye, that demonstrate the same sort of capabilities that these UFOs demonstrate. And the moment I heard that was part of their mission, I was just dumbfounded as to how they expect to actually pull that off, because you're talking about changing the energy paradigm. You're talking about basically like destroying fossil fuel industry. If you say, okay, we have this craft now that does what all these UFOs are doing, that are not ours, flying around the world. Like, do you actually think they were able to going to pull that off?
If you're asking, let me put it this way. Just because a new company, public benefit company, puts something in their mission statement doesn't mean that that's their mission, right? You're going to put a company out there, you want to raise some money because you've got to pay people, you've got to have money to function, right? You can't just go out there and volunteer and do what they do, anything really without funds. So they raise funds. They didn't raise that much. They expected to raise a lot more, but say they raised 25 million, it wouldn't matter. They have a mission statement there that's interesting, and over a long enough period of time, who knows, they might go there. I didn't buy it initially, because I still don't, because many of these people know that the government's already working on those technologies, and so if they were to spend a ton of money trying to do this, the government already did it probably 40 years ago. That doesn't make any sense. And so I invite a different interpretation. They have a mission statement, get people involved, raise some money, but that's not the reason they exist. That's not the reason that they emerged. The reason they emerged is to end the truth embargo. And what they have done since has, well, virtually everything they have done since they launched, most everything, has been in service to ending the truth embargo. A little research stuff, a little a cooperative research agreement with the Army, no big deal. It has all been about ending the truth embargo. And in order to do that, you need congressional hearings. So not surprising, there's been a great deal of activity regarding Congress. Recently, Elizondo said, we need hearings. So, yeah, look, is it bother you that things are not exactly as they're portrayed? I can understand that, but also understand that for a group that formerly worked their entire career with the military intelligence complex to come out and try to move this ball forward, the idea that they can just step forward and say something and it's going to happen, no. They have to have a strategy, and that strategy has to be executed within the real world. And so they have had to limit what they could say. They have had to misrepresent things a little bit. I understand that. But that often happens when it comes to getting government policy changed. And so they've done a pretty good job given things went terribly wrong. They got the wrong president, and about the time that things might have started to get a little bit more sane, they got a pandemic. And so it's turned into a nightmare for them. They did not do this expecting that they were going to have to hang out to dry for 4 years. They were hoping this thing would be a slam dunk by, I don't know, March of 2017. And so because they're not making money, it hasn't helped them get any business or contracts. It's probably cut off anything they could do. They have suffered. Though they had retirement money, they're okay. This has been a nightmare for them. And most people don't get that. They think this was the plan. A launch in 2017, put some articles in, and then take flack for 3 more years until there was a change of administration. No, that wasn't the plan. So they're doing the best they can with what history has delivered up, and they've managed to get to the point where the DOD has basically thrown in the towel and said, okay, look, this is going to be over. What do you want? Okay, we'll give you this, but we're not going to act out of line. And there's people coming on board: Woolsey, Brennan, Radcliffe,
Rubio.
NASA.
Yeah, I know.
So
NASA apparently, yeah.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, like, the only disagreement that probably Brennan and I have with you is that
really only one.
Well, we're just saying that this version of disclosure is a planned disclosure. It's not like the DOD's like, fine, we give up. It's like, okay, let's let them have it the way we want them to have it. And that's going to push our agenda.
That's right. I would add to that for nefarious reasons. Yes.
Well, that gets into motives. Look,
a lot of evidence pointing towards it.
Yeah, the government. You don't think that the process of ending the truth embargo was going to be, I don't know, just spitballed? Of course, it's going to be planned. It's going to be organized. Hell, you'd be amazed at how much organization goes into just giving the State of the Union address. And so I'm not shocked that they're planning anything. I'm not shocked that they're conducting in a way that will minimize negative pushback to the government, or that will show them in a better light. That's human nature. I don't have a problem with that. So I'm happy. Now, when it gets to what is their motives, are they nefarious or not nefarious? I just don't know. And I'm not in a position to assess it, really. I'm interested in, I can assess the disclosure process, and the goal is to get disclosure. Look, let's take the civil rights movement. One could make the case that the only reason that the government passed the Civil Rights Act was not to end segregation in the South. It was a much more nefarious agenda because it would get more people of color into the workforce, and they would generate more taxes, and then they could control them more because the IRS could, whatever. Or it could be that they felt it was the right thing. Again, until I get powerful evidence in terms of projecting the motive behind the actions of the DOD, I will assume that they're just trying to do the right thing in the most favorable way.
It's probably both. It's probably both in that case, in that scenario. You know, it's a win-win for both the nefarious dudes and the activists, the human rights dudes.
And to that point, let's talk about motive. So why would you think aliens would contact humanity? Do you think that it's to stop our aggressive expansion into the stars? Steve Bassett?
I think ETs have been engaging us for as long back in history as you want to go. Before humans, Homo sapiens sapiens emerged, the planet was kind of boring, frankly. There was still plenty of life here. Millions of species have come and gone during the evolution of life on this planet. So we have been a petri dish for life of unmanageable types and kinds. And guess what? We have scientists that are extremely interested in all life on this planet, how it evolved, how it develops, how it changes. The fact that other species could have great interest in life on other planets, which would be really cool, is hardly shocking. So I think they've been engaging for a long time.
Follow-up question.
We're cutting. Wait. We're cutting now. We're segueing to the film, The Day the Earth Stood Still. You just saw a little clip of that when the saucer lands.
It's a great clip.
This is another little clip. This is just how it would be televised. So we're going to discuss, in terms of this film and its hypothesis of why we might be getting contact over the years. And so let's watch this little clip.
Do not know where it came from. The ship is now resting exactly where it landed 2 hours ago, and so far there is no sign of life from inside it. Troops have been rushed across the Potomac River from Fort Myer and have thrown a cordon around the ship. They're supported by tanks, artillery, and machine guns. Behind the police lines, there's a huge crowd of curiosity seekers.
There must be security for all, or no one is secure. Now, this does not mean giving up any freedom, except the freedom to act irresponsibly. Your ancestors knew this when they made laws to govern themselves and hired policemen to enforce them.
Now, that's Klaatu, 1951. A year later, we do end up having the famous UFO flying over the Capitol building. It's interesting that this movie actually came out before that. But
predictive programming.
There you go. Klaatu has a little speech at the end of the film, and he says, look, I had my little soiree with you guys. I got to know what you were about. I prevented, your world's destruction. But you guys are a threat to this sort of galactic federation that we've created in space, and this council is in charge of monitoring intelligent races that are ready to go into space, and we can't allow you to bring your aggressions with you because you're using nuclear weapons. Now, the whole nuclear weapon theme to UFOs and why we started seeing them en masse has been prevalent in ufology forever. It's been prevalent since 1947 when we began testing the bombs, and it continues today. Apparently, that is the running theme in ufology. It's probably on the Netflix documentary said a couple times, and I didn't even have to watch it. So tell me, do you think that Klaatu is written right out of Donald Kehoe's book, and a character trying to exemplify the theory as to why they have come.
The two films, Day That Earth Stood Still, are in some ways the two most significant films ever done on this subject. And if you own an original copy, one of the originals of these films, save it, because one day it's going to be worth millions of dollars. And here's why. It turns out both films are right. Whether they had any inside information, I don't know. I don't care. Both films nailed it cold. The first film was about the fact that our nuclear weapons raised a significant problem for extraterrestrials, and therefore and us, right? And therefore, Klaatu had to come down and discuss this with us. The second film was about the impact of massive impact of humans on the Earth, on the species, on the biosphere. All right. Okay. Well, guess what? I believe
we're watching
that
a little clip here, actually, for context.
One, yeah. Good old Keanu. He's pretty good in that role, I thought. He's great at underplaying a role. He's fantastic at that. And then, of course, there's Connolly. Oh, I love her.
Get off my Kool-Aid, Bassett.
That last line he says there, she says to him, "Why have you come to our planet?" And he says, "Your planet?"
Yeah.
And the theme changes in the second one, and it goes, "We're destroying the planet,"
exactly,
which is a common theme in ufology. Many of the crop circle researchers are saying that's one of the messages, and many of the abductees have been saying for years that's one of the messages. We're destroying the planet, and they're worried. And he says to her, "Your planet," because throughout the film after this, he has summoned a different type of robot, and it is a nanobot storm that is literally devouring the planet and ripping it apart like Robot Piranha or something.
Right.
Hell yeah.
And,
great name for a band.
Robot Piranha, yeah. And basically, the plan is at this point to destroy humanity, because we're a scourge to the planet and to wildlife and to the ecosystem. We're a scourge to ourselves because we're killing ourselves. And he actually, before they enact this plan to kill everyone and let the animals and stuff survive, he has this meeting with apparently a envoy from his race that was sent to the planet earlier. And of course, they meet at a McDick's or something like that.
I'm loving it.
Yeah, a little product placement. And they have a chat, and he says, "Look, these folks are not worth saving." but he loves mankind, he says after, because he doesn't want to leave the envoy here. But he says, we're destructive, and we're a threat to ourselves and to the planet. And he also says after this little clip that it's sad because we actually know that's our destiny. We know that we're going to destroy the planet.
Possible.
And what do you think, Bassett? Do you think this is just reality written into fiction here, or fiction written into reality?
What I'm saying is that these two films nailed it right in the bullseye. That's exactly what's going on. I don't know if it's luck or whatever. There are two very famous cases that are getting and will get even more attention. One is the Westfall case in Australia, and the other is the Ruwa Zimbabwe aerial school case in Africa. And what is remarkable about these two cases is that a craft landed, ETs were actually out, not for a very long time, happened to be right next to schools. The kids run out, they get very close, and they get a psychic message from them. And the message they get is, one, you're at risk of destroying yourselves with these nuclear weapons, and you're also destroying the planet with your behavior. You're destroying the biosphere. And these cases are very strong and amazing, and they're going to get a lot of attention. Now, we happen to know, those of us that examine the contact history, is that contactees have been getting these messages in their individual encounters with ETs a lot. Nukes and environmental damage. They're given these messages in various ways, telepathically, showing images and what have you. So I was convinced some time ago that's exactly what's going on. So another way to put it is this, and this is how I describe it. Again, this is an assessment. It's a speculation. I can't prove it. It's my assessment. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Somebody's got a better one, I'd love to hear it. Is that one of the reasons they are here is because we built nukes and we use them. And while that can't hurt them, if we develop interstellar drive, we can hurt them. And they are pretty aware of our technology. They're aware of where our tech is going. They have, well, we are pretty aware of where our tech is going. I think they're even more sophisticated. I think they know within probably a decade when we will finally crack open the relativity problem and create the workaround that would allow us to go interstellar. If we do that, we're going to take our nukes with us. It's real simple. It's not complicated. We're going to take the nukes with us, just to be safe. So that can't happen.
Pack the nukes.
We can't. That simply cannot happen. If we were in their shoes, if humans were in an interstellar craft, monitoring a planet 20 light years away, and we saw that they developed nukes, they used them on themselves, and then about 100 years later, it looks like they're going to develop interstellar drive. The idea that we would simply fly back to the Earth and say, I hope they don't find out where we are, is not an option. We would intervene. And that's exactly what they're doing. They're intervening, and I think I know where that is going. Secondly, they, I think, have an appreciation and maybe even a grander knowledge of how the galaxy works, how life evolves, how complex it is, and so forth, and have had the chance to develop a certain appreciation for a biosphere that takes billions of years to evolve and develop, even to the point of creating a sentient life that is able to create technology and so forth. And therefore, they have a certain appreciation for our planet and its history. And so the idea that we might destroy the environment, completely undermine our biosphere, for them, I think, would be rather wasteful, right? If not reprehensible.
But why haven't they intervened when we just whacked every dodo bird, in the Polynesian, Australia? Why haven't they intervened when
every dodo bird?
Yeah, why haven't they intervened when we destroyed and killed every black rhino in Africa? Why haven't
Great question.
Why haven't they flown over to Japan and had a little talking to our folks there that are destroying the dolphin population and killing every whale that they can find north of their country? Why haven't
they just taken every piece of shit pedophile and just launched them out into space where they stand and just done, over, no more problems? There's a lot of reasons.
They call
for
that a pedo rocket.
Yeah. And a couple of the things to that point though, man, is that it's possible that, so what do you think that they told people whenever they abducted them before 1945, before we were dabbling in the atomic weapons? Because arguably they've been here since either the dawn of humanity or long before. That's one of the arguments. There's some evidence to support that. But what do you think that they told people back then? To stop cross-fencing, you're putting up too many fences. Were there any dire warnings for humanity before we got into nuclear weapons?
I don't know. The fact is that there's other reasons for contact besides providing messages.
It seems to be a main theme, like what you were talking about. It seemed to be a main theme, all of them, and I agree with you, yeah.
It comes a main theme after 1945. Prior to 1945, it's not a key theme. So if they were if there were contactees prior to 45, then they may not have been getting such messages. But the reason they were contactees, it doesn't have anything to do with nuclear weapons or environmental destruction. It happens to do with other work they're doing, which has a very strong genetic component. So again, the question is somewhat moot. They were dealing with them before 95 for other reasons. After 45, well, it changes dramatically.
Way before that, some people say even the Book of Enoch is some kind of abduction tale.
And they had vitrified glass that they found that was tens of thousands, if not millions of years old over there too, that looked like the result of a nuclear weapon. You know,
to answer your question about dodo birds right away, because I'm pleased that dodo birds got brought into this.
Please, the dodos.
They're concerned about the biosphere, its ability to sustain life, not the dodo bird. Again, over the last million years, 100 million, untold millions of species have come and gone. That's part of the natural process of evolution. What you don't want to have is a collapse of the biosphere that wipes out most or all of the species.
The sixth
but more importantly, we're part of the biosphere now. And we are not just a dodo bird. We are a sentient species that took 4 billion years to evolve. And therefore, by destroying the environment, we're also destroying ourselves, as a nuclear war would as well. And I think they have a certain place in their worldview regarding sentient beings. Meaning, we hate to see them annihilate themselves, because the sentient being is quite an extraordinary thing. Whatever. They're clearly concerned.
That's the argument, though. Why are they that concerned about this sentient being when actually, arguably, we're destroying a lot more species on the planet than ours, and we're destroying ours as well? The planet would be a lot better off without us, is one of the ideas. So if that's the case, and aliens or whatever really does want to see the biosphere continue and not all this horrible shit keep happening, then they would take us out. So this then lends to the idea that they're a threat. Do you think that they're a threat?
I don't think they're a threat. And the answer to your question, they're concerned about both. They're concerned about the biosphere, and they're concerned about the human race. Okay? There's a reason they have probably more concern about us than, I don't know, the spotted toad. You can come up with your own answer to that question, but I think they do. The biosphere and us.
But I mean, but they have no problem with humans destroying an animal's habitat and watching it go extinct. You know what I'm saying? So it seems a little. They seem to be picking and choosing, their battles on what they want to do.
If we were to,
which in turn,
if we were to interpret some possible version of these contact interventions, it could be just simply they're trying to send a message, and it's up to us to actually take action, because they're not going to save us. Like
the Star Trek thing. You can't intervene.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, unless you're trying to fly to our planet with nuclear bombs on board, that's
another thing. So,
that's war.
All of this, though, is predicated on the idea that they are from other star systems and that they have to linearly traverse or have a wormhole to travel from point A to point B. What another argument, though, for that is a few, man. There's a myriad, there's a buffet of ideas out there that might speak to this idea on why specifically they want to talk to us about nuclear weapons in the biosphere and taking care of the planet. And one of those is that, nuclear weapons, they say, on an atomic level, affect other dimensions. Now, science has already talked about up to 11 possible dimensions. Some people argue on the number, but their validity is there. So maybe it's interrupting something on their dimension, and they're dimensional beings, meaning that they blink in and out as they want rather than traverse a distance in space. But that wouldn't do anything for the idea that they don't want us traveling to the stars, so therefore they're intervening. But if they were crypto-terrestrials, meaning inside the Earth, which is another possibility, or if they were interdimensional beings, which on an atomic level, these specific weapons do something, then they would want to see that stopped. So these are just other possibilities. I mean, and I like this. We just discussed the ideas. All of it's valid, or the Earth is flat. It's an infinite plane. It goes on forever.
All right.
And aliens are just things coming over from another part.
All right. No, not on this podcast. We're
talking about everything else. We're talking about possibilities here. That's all we're talking about. And if you set off a nuke on a flat plane, maybe it does affect things around us. It's just possible. That's all I'm saying.
All right. Flat Earth projection.
Every scientist that who has a career has to make a decision about what areas they're going to engage.
Yeah.
What are they going to research? All right. And almost any field you want to pick, there's a buffet of things that they could invest their life into.
Yeah.
If they pick one that has a 1 in 500,000 chance of being true, then they may end up wasting their life. And so you have to make those calls. I have no problem with star-to-star travel. I'm not concerned about these other hypotheses. I think the odds are minuscule in terms of the atomic weapon explosions affecting them. every second, the equivalent of 1 million or more hydrogen bombs goes off in our sun. So if nuclear explosions were to create a problem, then our sun would be a far bigger problem than us. We're nothing. So
if our sun is what they're telling us it is.
What now?
If our sun is what they're telling us it is. Some scientists argue against nuclear fusion. Now, another thing, though, that I did want to talk to you about is the way that this disclosure is going to roll out. Again, I think that, we're going to probably cap the episode here in a couple minutes, just simply because we want to take a quick pee break and go to a part 2. So stick around for part 2, guys, for sure. Mr. Bassett, what are your final thoughts on the day the Earth stood still and its implications for what we can kind of, is it a template for disclosure? Do you think that that's one of the more likely scenarios?
Well, not disclosure, but rather it is a
reveal arrival. They would disclose to us that they're here.
I think that
contact.
Again, they can disclose to us anytime they want to, but they haven't. We're going to disclose it to ourselves. But I think that the day that Earth stood still, the 2 films actually have correctly portrayed two actual reasons why the ETs are here and have been quite active since 45. Whether they got lucky or whether it's just a common sense logical interpretation, which I happen to think it is. Sometimes the simplest explanation is the correct. Actually, most of the time, the simplest explanation is the correct.
Sometimes, yeah.
And so those 2 films, in that sense, are going to be revered over time for getting it right. Great. That's fine. So that's why I'm glad we brought these films up. I believe is the core issue, and disclosure will result in us confirming that. And I expect certain things to happen post-disclosure, which will confirm these 2 fundamental motivations for the ET engagement.
Do you think we'll get altruistic motivations from them? Can we trust what they say?
Hey, you know how you trust people? You trust them by their actions. So if their actions are good, then you can trust them. If it's not, then you can't trust them. And so we just don't know yet. And so we'll wait and see. We'll find out.
There are examples and stories of people being married for 40 years and then one of them loses their mind one day and kills the other one.
Yeah, sure.
And this may be another thing, right? This is just another possibility that they've been, because that's one of the argument about them being hostile or, them being a threat. And I agree with you on this. I don't necessarily feel that they are. I get that vibe as well. But it seems that maybe they've just been playing the long game and they've been, kind of neutralizing our fears about them. And then all of a sudden one day, boom, they just flip the switch and that's it for humanity. I mean, it's possible. I like you though, want to think the other way. I'm optimistic.
There's nothing we can do about that.
Right. Absolutely. And not like we could.
I'm more concerned about a new species turning up that has had no engagement with us at all, simply turning up out of nowhere with malicious intent. That is certainly possible.
Bird people.
But interestingly enough, the number one thing to protect us about that circumstances would be the power of, say, 4 or 5 other species acting collectively to protect us against this rogue Borg-like intrusion. In other words, we can't defend ourselves against any interstellar group, but we could if we're in alliance with other interstellar groups, which may be one good reason why they've been pushing the disclosure issue as well. For instance, we haven't got the ability to redirect a, say, massive mountain-sized asteroid. We can't do it. So if one actually turns up and starts heading for us, it's game over. They do have the ability to redirect such an asteroid, and probably they would. But they might not. I don't know. But the thing is that I'm just trying to point out that our future existence is very much connected to the actions of extraterrestrials. And then the question comes down to what does our relationship need to be to maximize that degree of protection? And so that's another reason for disclosure, one of many, many, many. There you go. Hi, guys.
There's no bird people on here, but do you think any of these guys here are going to be saving our asses from an asteroid the size of a mountain?
Only takes one. You have 5 species, 5 different civilizations engaging us. 4 could say, I don't care. It only takes one to say it would be a waste to see most of life wiped out on this planet by what amounts to an act of God.
Well, maybe it's the bird people getting revenge on humanity for the dodo.
There you go. There you go.
So on that note,
I see. I found some bird people here. Look at the little eagle boys on the bottom left.
Twisted.
Bottom left. Two bottom left. Yeah. All right. Anyways, so that's
cool.
The first episode.
So yeah, we'll pick it up. We'll pick it up in part 2. We still haven't talked about the arrival. I've got a lot of things to say, and we're going to tie something in. I've got a big tie-in for all of this stuff and the UFO movement community, all of it as a whole. So make sure y'all check out part 2. Welcome to part 2. Part 1, we covered a bunch of cool stuff. Stevie B, you know what you're talking about. D-Weir, killing it, dude, killing it. And then I'm Brandon from Expanding Reality Podcast. Check that show out. We also, all three, had a show together earlier on in the catalog, so make sure to check that one out. That was a lot of fun. Thank y'all for joining me on that. So we're back here. We're talking about Disclosure. We're talking about a couple of movies that may be what Contact is looking like. You know, this is all speculation, of course, but you can make some educated guesses. And of course, you got knowledgeable guys like these here that know what they're talking about. And these are educated guesser professionals. It's
okay,
not...
if there was, here's a better one for you. If there was full disclosure about aliens, UFOs, the whole enchilada, did I pronounce that right?
No, but I liked it. I liked it.
Enchilada.
So,
I like that enchilada. You sound like a French guy.
It's the French version.
Yeah, I was about to say. Yeah,
enchilada is the French.
Croissant.
Enchilada.
So, if we get that version of Disclosure, what do you think is a likely contact that would happen in the post-disclosure world? Do you think there will be something like this little clip? Wait, watch it.
Shit.
Oh, yeah.
Cue it. Roll it.
Yes.
Great
I
segment.
love this movie. It was wonderful.
Here we get the big old squid hand here. These are squid aliens.
Skadoosh. Yeah. Which is like an optimal thing, and there's a lot that I've got to say about this movie, actually.
So say it.
Okay, so check it out.
We'll wait for Bassett to say.
Okay.
What he has to say about.
Bassett, what do you want to say about it?
Go for it.
This is a brilliant movie in so many ways. It's well received. It got a good rating. I don't know how much money it made, but it's a movie, I think, for the ages. And I loved it. It's really less about extraterrestrials than it is about communication and how complex that can be, and what they were trying to do is somewhat the case with what we do with animals on our planet here. I mean, we're increasingly learning that many animals have much more communicative ability than we think, and so forth. It's just well done. However, the universe doesn't seem to work that way. It's interesting. There is a reason why sentient life. Well, maybe this way. They push the limit here. For all the species that we're running into have some very significant commonalities. One head, 2 arms, 2 legs, and something that can manipulate. You need that is the basic template for sentient life that can develop technology. Porpoises are sentient and very smart. They will never go into space and build rockets and go into space. So this obviously animal is got some ability to manipulate with these giant tentacles. So it's not out of the question that it could build advanced tech and fly interstellar craft, but not likely. The other point is that, and one of the most significant things about Contact, which is just not really talked about enough, it appears that every species that is engaging us is telepathic. Now think about that for a second. That just can't be luck. So it appears that sentience may always lead to telepathy. That there's something about sentience and consciousness that once you learn enough and whatever you got to do, you can become telepathic. Well, obviously that simplifies communication with other species. So apparently these entities were not telepathic, so they violated that common trait, which created a really tough situation. But think about it. Imagine if none of the species engaging the planet right now were telepathic. They would have to learn a language and be able to communicate. My guess is they would do it by machines. They would have translators, right? And one would question, why didn't this advanced being in that movie have a simple translator? Well, it wouldn't have been an interesting movie then, would it? But it brings up all these questions, and a movie that does that is a wonderful movie, and I just loved it.
Great film. Darce, what'd you think?
Well, yeah, I agree that it was definitely about communication. It does echo some of the things we talked about in episode 1 in terms of a intervention to, prevent mankind from destroying themselves. There's a couple different interpretations that I've actually sort of gotten from this film in terms of why this contact happens, why the aliens show up. Definitely the one is that, because they show up, mankind unites. Mankind realizes we are one. We're not all these different sovereign nations. We're one nation. We're, obviously an eclectic selection of individuals, but we are humans. And at the very end, that's exemplified where the Chinese, I think it's the president or like the defense minister or something, gets the call from president. He gets the call from Amy. She says the message. The aliens gave her the message to say that was like somehow through some time. It was through time.
Yeah.
And it was the last thing that his wife said on her deathbed. Therefore, he took it seriously. We got to call off shooting at one of these alien ships. And because of that event, mankind is able to thrive and stop being so douchey, I think, is the interpretation.
Okay, douchey. First we're whacking dodos, and now we're getting douchey. This is interesting.
Check out episode 1.
To whack a dodo is a super douchebag thing to do. I mean,
okay.
That's why they went extinct. Yeah.
Well done.
Anyways,
at the end of this movie, you have roughly, which is the weakest part of the film, as far as I'm concerned, to a complex set of circumstances, the nations of the world come together, and that's a good thing. Why? Because of the nuclear threat, right? Obviously. And so it comes down to we're coming together, we're minimizing the risk of a nuclear war. Same theme, but approached in a much more intriguing way. Fine. So I like that movie, so it's more interesting. But I just said, I was with one of my colleagues today, and I said something to him, which I'll repeat here, and that is that the development of nuclear weapons and the development of a nuclear arms race was the most profound event in human history. The only thing that will surpass that will be disclosure. If you look at everything that's happened to the human race for the last 10,000 years, nothing compares with what we did between 1947 and 1980. Build a vast stockpile of massive nuclear weapons capable of destroying civilization, simply because we couldn't come to an agreement that that's a bad thing to do. And so for the last 75 years, we've always lived just about 18 minutes away from nuclear war, maybe even less, 12 minutes. And we've completely adapted to it. Any day we could have that war. We could have it tonight. We could have it tomorrow morning. And we've completely adapted to that, which is not a good thing, all right? In other words, by adapting to it, we have really undermined our willingness to resolve the problem. When was the last nuclear arms or limitation talks that you recall having taken place? When was the last political candidate with a serious chance to be president make it a centerpiece of their campaign? No. We are simply, basically, what's the word? We're taking a pass on. We're casting our fate to the winds. Whatever the hell, it's insane. We shouldn't be doing that. We should be. we get upset over this and that thing. All the things that we get upset on, pick any issue at all. Every one of those things that we go nuts about, global warming, homeless people, issues between countries, all of them are moot if we have a nuclear war. Doesn't matter. And yet that issue is like, well, what can you do? So we are dancing on the edge of the volcano. We've adapted to it. I choose not to dance. I am basically an anti-war, anti-nuclear weapons activist in a sense, and we have to deal with this, or it doesn't matter about all of our politics and issues and all that crap that we fill our lives with. That's the one issue we must solve. It's the most important issue in the world, and we haven't been able to solve it. So am I shocked that extraterrestrials who may understand this have moved in a very aggressive way, including interfering with our nuclear weapon sites, turning on missiles, turning off missiles, and so forth? Do I think that's an accident? No. I think there's a direct connection there. And so the nuclear issue is the most important issue in the world today, except possibly for ending the truth embargo and opening the door for open contact. The two are inextricably connected in ways that we're only still starting to understand. And I am doing my best to learn as much and think about as much about that as possible for some various reasons. But this is the real core story here to all of this. There's Roswell and there's Bentwaters and there's this contact event and that sighting and all that. Okay, great. Thousands of books have been written. But at the core of it is the relationship between extraterrestrials, our invention and use of nuclear weapons, our persistence in maintaining those weapons, and the impact it would have on us if we use them, and the impact on extraterrestrials if we build interstellar craft and take them into space. These are huge fundamental issues that transcend all the other stuff that is being engaged on the ET issue. They are fundamental, right? They don't care about the dodo. They care about us ruining the entire biosphere. They don't care so much about they care less about our using nukes on ourselves than bringing them into space and threatening all nearby civilizations. These are big aspects of this phenomena, which, don't be surprised, start getting addressed very soon in the media and in the intellectual sphere.
Something that I really liked about the arrival was the entities themselves, because what you said to the bipedal thing being the most likely, it's not. It's like the worst design possible. There are a ton of perils of being bipedal. We have osteoporosis. We have tons of heart problems. There's a big issue with being designed the way that we are, just simply because we evolved that way. There's a guy I've had on the show. He's an author. He wrote a book called Identified Flying Objects. He's an anthropologist, a professor up in Butte, Montana, and Dr. Michael P. Masters. And whenever we talk about being bipedal, only one species on the planet has ever done that in the millions and millions and millions that have been around, and that's been us. So it's not an optimal design. And what I did like about the movie is that they took that into account, and they took into account a lot of things, man, that a lot of people overlook as far as atmospherics. Like, they needed to have a completely different atmosphere than we did to survive. That's a big thing that gets overlooked often. And the fact that they walked in with hazmat suits and knew that any kind of contact might result in some sort of contamination, we just don't know at that point. But then also the fact that they were this different organism that was still organic in nature, which was interesting. It operated on a different chemistry, of course, because of its environmental needs. But, the fact that it still had things, undulating arms that it could articulate things with. So it's not necessarily the two, like I said, the bipedal thing it's a problem, and there's a lot of perils in being bipedal. And the fact that they pointed it out and chose that the entity be completely different, the nod to the squid element of it, because there's a conspiracy theory, of course, that the squids or octopuses are actually aliens from another planet that have been here, because they're so damn different. They have like 3 hearts. They bleed blue blood. I mean, it's insane whenever you take a look at those things. So that's one of the conspiracy theory elements to it. So I like that it was kind of in the film that way as well. And that's a completely plausible thing. Now, something I wanted to point out about the ship. What did you guys think about the ship itself?
I think the ship, what stood out to me and about the ship as well as the actual occupants, the aliens, was that it was more so organic. It was it was like a big rock.
Yeah.
It was like a big, like, black obelisk sort of soapstone or something like that. And the squids shot out ink that they could move around with telekinesis. And there's actually a pretty cool scene, just a little bit into the film, probably at the midpoint, where they're actually getting pretty far in terms of breaking this communication barrier. And some old D-bag from the military there decides to plant a bomb inside the chamber.
Yeah.
And take out everybody, because, I mean, that is a possible situation we could run into in terms of some kind of contact. There's going to be a lot of Hezbollahs and, jihads or whatever. See, they use telekinesis. It forces them out of the room, and the bomb stays in the room. That little squid move there. I don't know if you saw that moment there. Just back.
Look, these scenes are great, aren't they? I mean, it's just beautiful done scenes.
It's a great movie.
Right there, and then pushes them out. Right, saves their stinking lives. So I mean, that would be an interesting time to live in, where we actually have that would unite humanity too. And would you actually think that could be a tactic of the American military to have this form of disclosure where we unite against a common enemy, as Ronald Reagan famously spoke in that speech to the United Nations?
87, 89?
I think that's so. That's very anthropomorphic. I mean, that's how humans operate. I don't think that's how they operate. If we come together finally in order to take on the extraterrestrials, then coming together will be the last thing we do. I guess we'll have a moment of togetherness, and then we will be gone. We cannot defeat them.
So what'd you think about the ship?
It was a well done. It sort of mimicked the extraterrestrials, who are fairly not exactly attractive, kind of bland, sort of a gray color. And so the ship doesn't have any fancy stuff. It's this kind of blah gray. So it kind of matched up well. I mean, I don't know what to say more about that, except that I think it was a good way to go. And it was believable. You didn't see any dials. You didn't see any of the usual fancy stuff. But the fun thing about the ship was that it was positioned. It was not touching the ground. It was anti-gravitically just positioned there, solid, right? It was kind of cool. So they had to use a thing to get into it. I kind of like that. That was kind of cool. And then the gravity changed. Which was good. All of these were well done. This is great sci-fi. It was a little more complicated than typical sci-fi, and so you're not going to make the big bucks. I just hope that thanks to streaming, we're going to see more movies like this that don't need to make $950 million, but we'll have some wonderful graphics in it and be more complicated. Streaming is great because it makes it possible to make much more complicated, more intellectually challenging movies, and be able to do it and not lose your ass. So I'm a huge fan of streaming. I think it's a major change in civilization, to be honest with you.
So one thing about the ship that I noticed was the layout of it. Okay, so it's very, very interesting. To what you said, Darcy, absolutely looks like a rock. It's definitely organic. It looks organic. Another splinter off of that idea would be the Hollow Moon idea, where there, are claims that there are ancient writings of Chinese people living back then, whenever you couldn't write anything of fiction. You had to write everything. It was illegal to do anything other than actual fact. And they talk about a time where the moon came here. Now, one of the ideas, and I think Alex Collier points this out really, really well, he does some great work on it, is the Hollow Moon idea, that there's a hollowed out planetoid, that they took a rock or a planetoid type of an object in space, allegedly, hollowed it out, put some machinery in there that manipulates gravity, life support systems, all of that good stuff. And then they shot it across the solar system, universe, whatever, found Earth, and then now they're here. And that could be one explanation for some interesting things. To the movie's point of it, though, that would mean that idea is universal. Yeah, that's, of course, how you travel through radiation and through micrometeors. You hollow out something that can take the impact of that and not ruin your ship. And so whenever then like you said, Steve, man, the hanging upside or just off the ground, awesome. I love that. No landing gear. It's mysterious. It's very cool. I agree with you.
Yeah.
That was badass. Yeah. And when the door opens, it's predictable every 18 hours, which there's definitely some 369 stuff going on there, which speaks back to Tesla, that multiple number. Then you look at the gravity switch, of course. Now, I've got to say to the U.S. military, they've got a hell of a scissor lift. That thing went up 50, 60 feet. How tall was that thing? Did you see that?
That was a custom, I think.
I mean, it was a tiny little thing on the ground, and then it just kept going, man. Anyway, so that aside, the gravity transition over, this is one of the points I wanted to make about the ship. So it's a long hallway that goes to a observation window with nothing else in it, with a gallery type opening. In my mind, this speaks to that the ships come to everywhere and contact people. That's what it's designed for. It's like a model home. It's like an inviting way of communicating.
That's a contact ship. It's not a warship. It's not a research ship. It's literally, we got to get these suckers up into the chamber so we can have a little chill time.
Yeah, and then the fact that they can manipulate gravity might be their power or just something they can do, and it's easy for them, and that's why it seems easy for them. Maybe not necessarily telekinesis. Maybe it's just a shift in gravity, because if you think about it, whenever he pushed up against the window, he could have just turned the gravity on in the room, and then they would have been pulled right behind. He didn't necessarily need to push them back, because if you look at it also, it looks like the gravity came on because all the tables and stuff tipped. They didn't fly back. They just kind of tipped as if they were falling, as if gravity was kicked back on, which could be another way in which they're able to manipulate that craft and do whatever they want with it, as that sort of element. But it did kind of lend to the idea that it was more of a welcoming ship, like I said, so they kind of expected it.
By the way, I'm a big fan of the artificial moon theory. I love this theory.
I know. It's so much fun.
Reasons. One is that we can get back to the moon, and if there's an artificial structure in there, we could probably get in it. So that would make it something that's accessible to us. Could be incredibly fascinating.
You're gonna go hijack the moon? Stephen Bassett hijacks the moon. I want that movie made. You just driving off with it. We're like, our tides.
The technology in there could be amazing. But you know why an extraterrestrial species would put a moon around a favorably placed planet?
Yeah, observation. You take resources, you see the planet, see if you can make humanity. Maybe we're just a giant experiment or a TV reality show or a zoo.
Well, yeah, but what's the reason why the moon helps that happen?
Well, allegedly, if you believe it, the moon affects our tides. But then, like I said, there's been a lot of ancient cultures. There's been cave drawings in Australia. The Chinese wrote about it, where they remember the moon arriving, that it wasn't always here.
No, that's the point I'm saying. Oh, you're saying it arrived not that long ago.
Well, relative to history, I'm saying we haven't always had it, like the giant impact theory would suggest, is an idea, and there's archaeological evidence to back this up from multiple sources that allegedly did not communicate with one another. So when you take that into consideration, then now you're talking about that, well, there was obviously life here without a moon there. That's the implications of that. Therefore, life doesn't need the moon to exist. So this is the idea. Well, this is why you can take her for a ride, man. Take her around the block.
It's the speed up of the evolution. Look, if the moon arrived recently, then no, this theory is completely out the window. But the fact is that the presence of the moon was critical to advancing life on the planet, particularly in the early days because of the tidal effects.
Is the idea
that's true? So I don't know about the Chinese, what they came up with. That might be completely incidental to this. It might be something that they're misconstrued.
It's not just the Chinese. There's several cultures that talk about it.
The idea that an artificial moon would have been placed here by an advanced species in order to ensure a relatively fast-paced evolution actually makes very powerful sense. So Who Made the Moon, that book, pretty cool book.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they made a doc about it.
Dude, Darcy, you got to do one.
We'll do it.
Dude, talk about Hollow Moon.
Buy the rights to
So
that.
much fun.
Hollow Moon.
Yes.
Yeah, well, I just released Secret Space UFOs Part 1, and I cover in that doc the, starting of the space program and how throughout the 60s and 70s and, even into recent days, there's many anomalies that have been found on the moon that just don't seem to prove to be natural. They seem to be some kind of ancient buildings or megalith structures. It's incredible. So
There were also, I want to say the Vedics talk about that with the Vimanas, that they would go to the moon and just hang out and come back. Like it was no big deal.
hey, some people theorize that the moon might have had an atmosphere at one point, and then
Yes.
it went through some kind of destructive process, and now it's this just piece of garbage floating up
Let me give you a
there.
better one. Or
All right, give it to me.
there is all kinds of cool shit up there, and there's a hologram over it so that we can't see the water, the lights, the greenery, the civilization, the comings and goings of the ship. It's all camouflaged.
That sounds like flat
That's
Earth
it.
theory.
That's
Isn't
the
that
one.
fun?
I'm buying
That
it.
sounds
that
like
awesome?
flat Earthery. I'm not down with it. But
No, because it's
you
flat
know,
Earth. That doesn't need to be
I've
there.
actually,
I'm
it's
saying
interesting.
it's possible.
I've seen actually videos actually on Tyler Glockner's Secure Team channel. He has a video. He did a bit of research some years ago, I think, and it shows a zoomed up shot of the moon, the lunar surface, from just some hobby astronomer, and every few minutes there seems to be this kind of like wave, this almost like frame buffering happening to
Yes.
the moon.
And you can
when
see
I saw
stars
that,
through
I
it.
was like,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
there's no flat Earth. There's no flat Earth.
It has nothing to do with flat Earth. It has nothing to do with flat
I know.
Earth.
I'm just fucking with you.
But
man.
it could. I mean, it could. Anyway, but what I'm saying is there's tons of evidence on this. This dude has a sick channel. I know exactly who you're talking about because it's fascinating.
Yeah.
Stevie B, have you ever seen this? Where you can see stars through the moon, or that there's a big wave that goes across it. It looks like it's rendering a little bit.
I vaguely
And it's
remember
not an
seeing it.
atmospheric thing. They can rule all that good science stuff out.
Yeah, I don't
the
know too much
spittled
about that, but
We're going into uncharted territory here,
yeah.
boys. So why don't we get
No,
back
the
to
arrival.
the arrival.
I think we covered the arrival. What's
I
the
think
other
we
movie
covered.
you wanna do?
Let's go into
Star Trek, dude.
Star
the Borg,
Trek.
man. Yes.
Yeah. So
This is awesome.
no,
This is got
before
everything.
before we do that, actually, we want to do Independence Day.
Oh yeah, we're still doing
yes,
that.
we
I was
can't
hoping
leave
you'd
that one
forget.
Oh yeah.
I was
So,
hoping you'd forget.
The reason why this is important is because this dumb movie actually holds. Look, see those planes that we just saw there? I'll go back.
Yeah.
Those planes are basically what Hal Puthoff was trying to get built under To the Stars Academy, right? Am I right?
I don't know.
They're if you look at them, they have alien technology incorporated into them. They're like a F-117
Like an F-35.
like anti-grav
Yeah.
technology.
Yeah.
This guy's gun is all sicked out with alien
Yeah,
glowing lights.
sure.
Looks like
you know.
Tron. That's dope. And
So the idea,
that
the
craft
idea,
design is in Avengers as well, with high technology too. Same exact craft design with the.
Sure. So what I'm
Yeah.
saying is the idea
The twin
here
tech.
in this film, we've lost Bassett. He's going to get
He's
his
gone.
chocolate.
He
I'm
gone.
gonna get my mouse. Relax.
He's getting his mouse.
You threw your
All right.
mouse?
So he's got a mouse, man. So
But
he's got
why
a
was it over
pet
there?
mouse. So,
Oh, it's a pet mouse.
so basically we've got this scenario where the planet was invaded once, but we claimed their technology, we reversed engineered it, and we've adopted it so that when this dumb invasion happens a second time, we've got these anti-gravity F-17s, F-117s, and, we're able to defend the planet. It almost looks like there's a Decepticon on the back wing there. I don't know if you noticed that. But so this film's interesting because it seems to, there's the moon. There's a little space battle on the moon. Like, it's a dumb movie, but it has the whole reverse engineering. And I wanted to like showcase this because, Stephen, we've talked about this in the past on other podcasts, and you say that you include this theory in your lectures that we're at this point where our technology has become so advanced. We've got AI flying at us. You know, it's on our phone, which Elon Musk will argue AI is, you know, all around us now, and you've got supercomputers in your pockets. So
he also called it a demon, though.
He called it a demon, really?
Yeah,
I think
he said it's a demon, and then he's talking about doing Neuralink. This is why the dude.
He probably smoked salvia right before he said that. But anyway,
maybe.
Look,
but the man said it. He did.
All I'm saying is, if we do have some kind of contact event, is it not likely that mankind will no longer be mankind? And there's two scenarios, right? Stephen Hawking predicted that mass contact would go the way that Christopher Columbus did to the Native Americans when the Europeans arrived on our shores here. So what is going to happen to life and civilization? Are we going to adopt technology? Are we going to lose our minds, rip out our hair, and scream and run in circles? Are we going to lose religion? Are we going to, you know, have sex in the streets, Rick and Morty style? I mean,
you've only got to something worth doing. Look, I've talked about this before. Post-disclosure, we'll spend a lot of time learning what we can about what we know about the ET issue, and that will include government information as well. And once we've learned a great deal and we've gotten over the initial excitement and fun, then open contact can take place. And that's when things get interesting. That's when I think we're going to find out the agendas, by and large, most of the agenda. And I think one of the agendas is this, that we have certain fundamental curves that are attached to our existence on this planet. One of them is a population curve. We keep breeding. We know better, but we just, you know, what can you do, right? And as a result, our population is starting to flatten a little bit, but it's headed towards unacceptable number. Huge problem. Huge problem. I mean, you say, well, look, we get a lot of people die from starvation. Hey, that's the way it is, right? And there'll be plenty of us left over, and we'll survive, keep going. We'll make more people. They'll die of starvation. What's the problem? Well, the problem is that people are smart and have resources, or even the poorest people, and they're not just going to die of starvation or whatever, or thirst, and go down quietly. You're going to have hundreds of millions of people suffering, and they're going to respond to that by coming together and charging up the streets and into the buildings and blowing things up and tearing things down and killing the rich and everything else. It's going to be chaos. So that's a bad thing. So we have this population problem, but we have other problems. We have other curves. The technological curves in a number of areas are turning upward. One of them is the AI. All right. The AI situation is moving faster than we are dealing with in a responsible way. And where we're going with that is down the line, hundreds of millions of people are going to be out of a job. And are we preparing for that? Not really. We talk about it a little bit. We're not doing anything, right? There are curves in the genetic technology area where we're starting to learn a lot more than we can handle. And that could get us into deep trouble. And we could go down the line. So in other words, our technology is now advancing than we are able to deal with it, because the one curve that isn't really steep, meaning it's flat, is our mental capacity. It hasn't evolved at all. It may have even devolved a little bit. It takes millions of years to achieve increased mental capacity. And obviously, we don't have millions of years. These trends have happened in the last 150 years. Our moral capacity is not getting any better. And so the tech is taking off, the population is growing, and we're basically the same humans that were walking around here 200 years ago, 2,000 years ago. This isn't going to work. What the hell can you do? What can we do? Well, we need intervention. We need a species to be able to intervene that's been there, done that, understands it, and can assist us in reconciling this situation, okay? Like birth control technology. The ETs will give us birth control technology that is incredibly cheap, totally safe, fun to use, and we can start bringing the population down. For some reason, we don't invest a lot into birth control technology. Even population growth is one of the biggest problems we face in the world. I don't want to get into that, but that's the way it is. And we could go down the line. But let me put it more in an immediate moment. If I were president of the United States, one thing I would do is I would immediately create a new cabinet position, and it would be Secretary of Science and Technology Ethics. And this cabinet person's job would be to ensure that I, as president, would be getting constant input about the situation regarding technologies, where they're going, what's happening, what are the ethical concerns, so they can be addressed ahead of catastrophes. And of course, I'd also have a Secretary of Peace. We have a Secretary of War. Why we don't have Secretary of Peace is rather interesting. It's been introduced, but it's always been put down.
Because you don't make money on war, on peace. You make money on war. That's
we got secretaries of things you don't make money on. The point is that the Secretary of Peace's job would be to ensure the president has everything the president needs to know about the options for peace, what's putting it at risk, what's not. So, but why am I mentioning this? I'm simply saying that the human race and its institutions needs to recognize the reality of the modern world, which is we are losing the capacity to deal with the things around us because they are changing faster than we can change, okay? And we haven't done that. Now, the extraterrestrials would know this. They have seen this before. I believe that this happens on every planet that has sentient beings develop and technology develop, because evolution works on a very slow basis, whereas population and technology works on a much faster basis. So there is always going to be this divergence. Now, if you go back in the 1400s, 1600s, or 3000 BC, there wasn't much. But then once you hit 1900, boom, off it goes. And so the 20th century was the turning point. The cracking of the atom, the beginning of the 20th century, relative, all these things were the turning point where the dynamics and the equations we had to solve in order to succeed as society changed dramatically. 50 years later, we build the bombs. After we drop them, a year later, the ETs expand their activity, continue to keep that going. Our technological issues continue to grow. Problems continue to develop. Our population continues to grow until at some point, we finally disclose the ET presence. Now, one last point. It didn't have to take 75 years. We could have had disclosure in 1952, 61, 72. There wasn't like this, the plan wasn't, oh, well, look, the way it is it takes 85 years to go through this process, and that's the way it is. No, not at all. We got delayed. I think in other civilizations that have gone through this, it might have been a shorter time frame. Drop the bomb, disclosure, ET intervention, 8-9 years later. In our case, the path we took was drop the bomb, build massive stockpiles of weapons, have an arms race. And that arms race we pursued with such vigor, we spent trillions of dollars on it. A lot of people starved to death because, hey, the money had to buy the nukes. And so we developed this 44-year Cold War where we all lived on the edge of the volcano. We could go at any time. The ETs, I think, realized that this had to run its course. It dragged it out and delayed it. And so we're now 75 years into this transition process, which really begins in 1945 and should end this year, right? 75 years is long enough. And then we'll see what happens next.
My question to you guys, and this is like another little cherry on top. It's a small little side theme to this incredibly bad movie. It's actually not a very good movie. But
you know what it is? It's Signs 2.
The side. That's definitely not Signs, man.
It's
That's
Signs 2. I will prove
movie.
it. No, it's Signs 2.
Okay, yeah. All right.
Go ahead.
So I'm going to show you a little clip. this is actually a scene that happens in the movie where the scientists realize that a good AI has come, this little sphere AI, and it's an alien artificial intelligence. It's come to supposedly help mankind fight off the, let's call them squidouches that have come to destroy the planet. And, do you think it's possible that there's a lot of accounts that are out there about contact and abductees, experiencers say that certain occupants of the craft are very artificial intelligent like. They sort of have a robotic manner to them.
Like
Do you think?
Pascagoula.
Yeah, that sounds like two robots helped one alien,
Yep.
And so do you think that there is a bad AI or a good AI element that's interfacing with our planet? Like how do we know that these are aliens that are even flying around these UFOs? They, physically, with our state of physics, with our concept of physics, our pilots would be turned to mush if they zapped around the sky like the Tic Tac was observed doing, right? Even if they're wearing a seatbelt, it would probably rip right through them, and their head would be on one side of the craft if it did one of these maneuvers in the sky so quickly at thousands of miles per hour. So is that artificial intelligence? Is that actually just a drone that's interfacing with our planet? And would contact ever look like that in a post-disclosure world where we're actually, we have the president shaking hands with like some AI from off-world?
Well, being very familiar with the development of the sex robot industry, I can say that, hey, what can I say? We will have intelligent robots in a relatively recent time span. By the way, that's another one of these curves.
Have you fucked a few robots, Stephen?
Gee, Darcy, that's an interesting question. Okay. No, I said I'm familiar with the industry. Okay. So
I love you, man.
I think what's different here is that what's supposed to happen is, in other words, what was supposed to happen on our planet is that Arnold Schwarzenegger it helps to produce a series of films called The Terminators, and we're supposed to watch this and go, holy crap, we can't let that happen. And so we have to make sure that the AI that we're developing can't get into the internet and do that. We need to be able to pull the plug anytime we want. Now, of course, that's not what we're doing. We're going, yeah, Terminator. We go there. That's what we want to do. Definitely want to do that. Let's get weapons that can pretty much make their own decision about shooting. And that's because at one level we're idiots. All right. I'm suggesting that the extraterrestrials probably are not that stupid. They saw their own Terminator movies and going, we're not going to let that happen. And their Secretary of Science and Technology Ethics said, yeah, you don't want that to happen. And so they don't create a situation where artificial intelligence can purely operate on its own. You're talking about a drone, a smart drone, yeah, but an artificial intelligence civilization where all you got is artificial intelligence and that's running the show, that would be a civilization where the living beings apparently did not watch those Terminator movies. So I'm not too worried about that. I mean, it's not that big a deal. There may be some robot ETs that are turning up in some of these abduction events. That's not that big a deal. And ultimately, at some point, you can only project so far into the future in terms of potential tech developments. At some point, it's just pointless. You want to go out 100,000 years? Please, I have no idea. It's just no way. All we know is that artificial intelligence can be a boon and also a curse to our society. Will we address that and act maturely? Well, acting maturely is not how humans roll right now. It's just not in our game plan.
Let me ask you about this film. We're going into the last film of the episode, and that is Star Trek First Contact, which I bought this for my dad for one of his birthdays on VHS when I was a kid. Selfish gift, because actually I was the one that wanted to watch it all the time, and he's a Trekkie, but I think he liked Stargate a little bit more than Star Trek, which drove me nuts. Every time I walked in the house and I saw him watching SG-1, I was like, get that shit off the TV.
Dude, MacGyver and teleporting? Where can you go wrong? That's a beautiful combination.
I don't know. The movies, the Stargate movie with David Spader,
yeah,
amazing.
Hell yeah.
The TV show, blah. Anyways, so look, yeah,
Steve,
they didn't have the money.
We're doing a show, Stephen.
They had a bunch of Canadian actors. That's what the problem was. So we've got Star Trek First Contact, great film. This is the scene at the very end where
Spoiler
the
alert.
Vulcan, this show is full of spoilers.
I'm kidding.
Vulcan head honcho walks out, ear reveal.
Yeah.
The crowd goes, "Oh my God.
Good Lord.
He's an alien. Look at those ears."
Oof.
And, the guy who starts up the Federation,
Thanks, time.
boom, live long and prosper.
Motherfucker.
And this guy apparently can't do it. Can you guys do it?
Yeah.
All day or day.
Well, I'll tell you.
Do it.
Not well.
If you can, you're good with the ladies. Boom.
Oh,
Nailed it.
boom.
That's good.
Anyways, so, you're thinking of this? Wait.
Or the guys, whatever you're into.
You're thinking of this. That's all right.
What?
You said something about for the ladies, right?
I've never seen
I
that
did.
before.
Anyways, so First Contact. Let's talk about this film because, interestingly enough, it is a bit of a segue. It is about bad AI because the villains of this film are actually the Borg, which are artificial intelligence gone wrong. They are trying to take over the universe with their zombie robots, and they adapt quickly, and they can, inflict great damage and harm, and just kind of rape and pillage everything along the way. Now, in terms of AI, what would sort of be a saving grace, and they touch on it in this film, Data. The running theme in this is he has a chip now where he can feel emotions. And in this scene, he says to Captain Picard, when they go to Deck 6 to stop the Borg that have invaded their ship, the Enterprise, he says, "Captain, I believe I am feeling anxiety right now. And this is the first time." And he says, "Data, do me a favor. Would you turn off that emotion chip, please?" And then he says, "Right." And then he just kind of does clips his head back and
That's how you do it.
turns off that emotion chip. Weep. There, it's done. So basically, that's kind of hits the nail on the head. Isn't artificial intelligence supposed to have empathy if it's going to operate within some parameters where it doesn't turn on all of mankind and just nuke us off the planet?
It's supposed to be programmed with empathy, but that's a human emotion that we haven't figured out how to program yet. So there's a myriad of chemicals, electrical signals, things like that take up being able to process an emotion like that. And we just haven't gotten there with AI. So therefore, to have them be making ethical decisions is unethical in its own right because they can't have ethics. They're devoid of it. They only possess that which they learn or they're programmed to do. And if they're programmed to learn whatever the fuck they want, then yeah, they could turn on humanity. The logical thing, whenever you talk about AI, and you hear this all the time in the argument, is that they see us as the problems we are trying to get them to solve. So if we're like, okay, well, I need you to clean up all this mess or whatever, well, they'll take out the humanity because that's what made the mess. If the mess is the problem, how it was created is the actual problem. That's where they get efficient and start solving that problem, which is where your fear of AI comes into play. They're unemotional about it. They just look at it logically. That's the scariest thing. They can't be reasoned with, and it can't be shut off if it does hit the internet. That's just the thing.
But at the end of Terminator 2, Arnold says to John O'Connor, "I now know why you cry."
These
And I
impressions
think
are spot on, Stephen, right?
not very good, but I was using my
But
Chinese
that's a movie.
accent there.
That's a
So
movie.
I know, but the whole idea, the whole premise there is that AI has learned what empathy is. They
It learns
understand.
to. It doesn't understand. It would learn to mimic the behavior that would be projected as empathy, but it's not actual empathy because there's nothing there. It just learned that that's what it's supposed to do. There are studies on psychology all the time where they'll have like 4 or 5 people in a room and they're supposed to wait. And this is just a study. There's one person that doesn't know what the deal is, and they'll sit him down in the corner amongst all these people and they're filling out paperwork, and then the bell goes off. Every time a bell goes off, everybody else stands up and then sits back down. This dude's looking around after a couple of them. And he's like, the hell's going on? All of them programmed this guy to then every time a bell went off, he would stand up with him and then just sit back down. It became an automatic thing. He would be sitting there filling out the form, bell would go off, he'd stand up, sit back down, just like everybody else. He was programmed to mimic the behavior. That doesn't mean he understands why they were doing it.
Humans are programmable. I mean,
this is what I mean, though. We would program AI to be programmable.
We are programmable, though. I mean, if you go turn on the television or you read the news, you're starting your programming because you're absorbing information that's been put out, and you're basically programming yourself to some degree. And I'd say that even mass media is a form of hypnosis that programs.
Absolutely.
I mean, you go to Fox News, you get half the country. You go to CNN, you get the other half the country. And there's no real, I mean, there's a couple things in between, but they tend to fall on those two sides. And it's programming, you know, it's intellectual, biological programming.
Yes.
It's neurosuggestive programming. But all I'm saying is if we have AI, the only way it's going to go bad is if it has no empathy, if it has no programmed ability to understand emotion and repercussions to human loss and such, you know, these types of scenarios.
Completely agree. But whenever you talk about the whatever you were just saying about the empathy, it can have that, but that's just, like I said, a programmed response. It's not necessarily actually empathy. Now, then the issue that you'd run into then would be preference, because if it's empathetic, it's got to choose what to be empathetic about. Let's say that this one robot has the power to be empathetic or the programming to do so, then it chooses kittens over its owner, whatever. And so now it murders the owner because it was bad for the kitten. You know, so it's empathetic towards the kitten, not necessarily the human. And then I know you talk about Moore's laws with the, you know, do no harm and all that stuff. But if at some point, if it's it will achieve something similar to sentience, because we'll program it in to be that way.
Are you talking
for
about
our benefit?
Isaac Asimov's?
Asimov. My apologies.
Moore's
Asimov.
law is how technology. Yeah.
You're right. Thank
sure.
you.
Yeah, no worries.
We're all learning and growing in a safe space.
I've said a few dumb things tonight. Don't worry.
Not at all.
And what you said is not dumb. You just got the wrong law. That's all, brother.
I did. I fucked it.
No.
But that's the point. And what I meant by the empathy thing, though, is that humans will program them to be programmable because we're programmable and we're creating this thing. So it's just like father-son deal. You know, your progeny is going to be like you. And so those creations will mimic human behavior, all of its best and worst qualities. So now you've got a best and worst thing that doesn't need to eat, that, you know, can survive forever, that can tolerate severe temperatures, that is far physically superior than any of us meatbags. And now you've turned it loose with empathy. I mean, it's insanity, man.
Well, I think like the whole Isaac Asimov law was that you, the first rule is you shall do no harm to like humans.
Yeah, but then you saw iRobot. Those were in there.
Yeah. Which is,
I mean, so it's
story,
if
right?
there's a way to do it, it can, you know, it's just possible. So I have a bombshell that's going to tie all this together before we wrap. So let me know when you want to do that.
Go for it. Drop that now.
All right. So what I think all this is about is if you look at the UFO community, the disclosure movement, anything you want to say about it, that it's more of a religious institution. Hear me out on this. So if you look at Diane Pasulka's American Cosmic, she talks about hierophanies, and I didn't even know what that word was until I read that book. So a hierophany is a place like Jerusalem, Temple Mount, or something like that. It's a place where deities came from heaven. and landed on a physical spot, Mount Sinai, where Moses got the 10 Commandments. These are hierophanies. So what you find then is things like Roswell. That's a hierophany. It's something that's revered, and people go there. They opened an alien, McDonald's there. I'm loving it. We really need to get sponsored by them soon. So, and so you find that all of these things occur, but they occur at a natural pace, as does religion. So it's just the new religion. Now, what's interesting, and what made me think of it as far as this movie goes, because it's a great book. If you guys haven't read it, check it out. She's brilliant. America Cosmic, Diane Pasulka. So, but with the movies, if you look at the second, well, let's just look at the first. The Day the Earth Stood Still, from the first episode. You've got something coming from the heavens, coming down to earth. They set up a little something around it, make it a spot of reverence. So now this place is now considered a hierophany. It is something that came from the sky, more advanced than us, whether mythically or technologically, it's not specified. Then they land, and now this is a spot of reverence and worship that a deity seeming comes out and then starts talking about saving the planet and stuff, has the power to destroy us, just like a god does.
Like Mecca?
Yeah, like Mecca, like Temple Mount, yeah, and Mecca and Jerusalem, all of that. These are hierophanies. So now that field right there is a hierophany. So then you look at the next one, The Day the Earth Stood Still, the Keanu Reeves, and God bless Jennifer Connelly Bassett. Get off my Kool-Aid on that one, man. She's spoken for. Then you look at that movie. Well, what is it? It's got biblical themes to it. You think of the tablets of Gilgamesh, the flood of Noah. He saves all these animals. So he saved all the animals and then just wiped humanity off the face of the earth, just like Noah in the ark. He has these arks that fly around the planet. All these animals are attracted to them. They shag ass. That's the plan. So they could save them, because the destruction of the planet isn't their fault. It's ours, is the narrative of this movie.
I like how in this scene he says, "We won't make it." And then he grabs them, they run, and they make it.
Yeah. So the next one, then, The Arrival. If you looked at that, how many ships landed across the planet? 12, like the 12 disciples of Jesus. Then also there's a reference to a cult in there that has Jesus as their emblem, that then burned themselves in their building because they saw the aliens coming and they saw it as a sign of their faith or of their religion. So there's a religious tie to it there as well. So all of these elements kind of lead to the idea that UFOs, the UFO community, this type of thought process is just another religion. It's just another thing that's mystified, glorious, and something that people look at with obsession.
Have you been talking too much with Robbie Graham?
Robbie and I hadn't talked since a little bit, but why?
Yeah.
Is that something that sounds like something he would say?
Didn't he leave like a UFO religion or something, and he's all spiteful about ufology now?
No, but I've heard of several people, man, in the movement. Not just I don't know what Robbie's specific instance was, and he's not here to defend himself. But I don't know anything.
I'm not attacking.
I'm just.
I'm
saying. I know you're not. I'm saying I'm not going to speculate on what happened because I don't know, and he's not here to tell me. But with the UFO community, I'm sure, Mr. Bassett, you've ran into this. You've been around long enough, and there's some bickering and some issues going on, like some people that can't play nice.
In any movement, any large movement or project, there's people that can't get along. There's nothing unusual about that.
Yeah, that's fair. And so, yeah, maybe it was something like that. And then, you just don't resonate with certain ideas or certain people. There's nothing wrong with that. You just kind of move on, and everybody just goes and does their own thing.
All I'll say about your hypothesis is this. Like, for Catholic and Christian religion, the one hierophany. I'm sorry.
That's okay. It's a new word.
The hierophany is Jesus is on this, he's put onto the crucifix, and the Jews did it. And I hope that our fans are not freaking out that I'm talking about this crap right now. Sorry, guys. But, I don't want to stoke any fires. But that's like the big event, right? And, there's also like some people pray to Virgin Mary and all that stuff. Like that's another hierophany.
Well, hierophany is specifically a physical place on Earth that a deity or something came and landed. So that area is called a hierophany.
So in most religions, there's one. In
sacred
ufology, there's thousands, man.
Absolutely.
It can't be a religion. It can't be
No,
a
it
religion.
can be. It's just
It's
got more
not a reli-
steps.
I mean,
It's a
there's
religion with
definitely
more steps.
there's definitely cult leaders, and there's definitely folks that follow the subject religiously, but in my opinion, it's not a religion because there's no church you go to pray.
Sure,
There's thousands of hierarchies because throughout history, you know, we mentioned a few tonight, Westall 66, Ariel School, you know, you've got Phoenix Lights, you name it, like everything, even airports in China being shut down because UFOs, you know, and that happened in 2011. You know, you can't call that a hierarchy. It's an event. It's a UFO event, and it's credible, and it lends credibility to just the fact that we're, you know, maybe some of these craft are ours. Maybe some of them are off-world, and we're all just trying to figure this out. We're all trying to find out what this secret is, and we want to get in on it.
Where are we going here? Give me a destination.
Are you?
We're going to wrap it up.
Are you
Stephen
religious
Bassett.
about UFOs?
Okay, because again, the issue of religion is complicated, and there are ET elements in some of the current religions in this world. Scientology says it's a religion. There's ET element there. The Mormon faith has a little of that. And then in the past, there's very good evidence that humans mistook ET events for something that would be context as religion. In terms of the extraterrestrial phenomena research activist efforts, there's almost no religion there. And that doesn't mean a person can't make it one, but I know a lot of the people that are involved in this, and we know a lot about the history of this issue. And there's been an attempt a little bit here and there to kind of give it that religious aspect. It's very small. The people have been polled on this issue to death. Millions and millions of people have been polled, and this idea that people are thinking of it as religion and forming religion around it, it's not turning up. It's not there. We aren't. This isn't 5,000 years ago or 100,000 years ago. We are an advanced technological global society, and which has a very, very large number of agnostic and atheists now. Very large number. It's not trivial. And those that do have religion are not prepared to swap their religion for something involving ETs. So I don't think that's going to be a problem. It's not an issue. People will make a religion about anything, fine, let them do it, that's their business. But in terms of how our fundamental reaction and response is going to be to learning about the presence of ETs, confirming it, and possibly having open contact, by and large, the society as a whole is not going to religify it. A few will, but mostly no. Now the species, now maybe they have a religion. I'm sure we'll ask them, do you believe in God? Yes. Well, do you have religious ceremonies? I don't know. Maybe they'll say, yeah. But again, that's not the same thing as worshiping ETs. There's not going to be much of that in the post-disclosure world.
I think
we're past that.
I think that is a possibility, though. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I mean, look, if we do have a mass contact event, you don't think there's a bunch of dum-dums out there that aren't going to run out and be like, we worship you. We want to, you know, start our own faith based around you, and please take us up to your ships and fly us around, oh God.
Fine. There's 7 billion people on this planet, okay? So if like 420 decide to do that, it's irrelevant. If 40,000 decide to do it, it's irrelevant. The question is, will human race in the collective approach this as deifying ETs? The odds of that happening are extremely small. So I'm not worried about that. It's like, don't create a problem that isn't there yet.
Well, look at from this perspective. They make you feel better. It's something whimsy that we can't explain and rarely anybody's ever seen. Some people will say that they will, even people standing there together. One will have a sighting, one will not. There's something very mysterious to this. There's something ethereal, extra dimensional, something like that. We've gotten to the point to where maybe we can describe it as technology, but this is perhaps what religion was made for all along. Maybe all religions are just an attempt to describe a UFO phenomena that they couldn't explain because they didn't have a technological reference point. So therefore, even the study of the aliens themselves are their own kind of new religion now that we have a technological reference point. Then you look at people like evangelicals, like let's say those people who, I don't know, rip people off by saying that they have holy water that they can mail to your grandma as long as she sends her a check. Or let's say, just for instance, just a hypothetical, that there's somebody that tells you that they can contact aliens with a green laser on a hill and you pay them a lot of money to go do it. And people follow that like a religion because they're hoping to have this religious experience via this modality. So therefore, it's not like they're going to write a Bible about it, but thousands of books have been written on the subject. And yes, the fact that there have been thousands of witness cases and hierophanies and all of these different places make it more pervasive than the few, or one at least, that all other religions possess. The idea is that it brings people together. They're studying something mysterious that they view as their salvation. Look at what we talked about the technology saving humanity. That's a salvation that we can't attain ourselves, that we're looking for this sky thing to come down and give us. It's a religion, man. It's just a religion with more steps. That's it.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm not going to buy it. It has a few elements of it, but it's not a religion. And one of the reasons that's troubling for me is that the religious thing has been used by the truth embargo to help undermine getting this
issue. It's not a negative thing. It's an observation. It's not a negative thing. It's not like I'm calling it a cult.
It's a negative thing. What is the word believer? People call people that are interested in the UAP phenomena, they call them believers. Why do they call them that?
Because they haven't witnessed. They believe that something there. They have faith, let's say.
Yeah, well, they're trying to tie their interest in the subject to some sort of religious approach to things. They believe in the ETs like they believe in God or believe in Jesus Christ. And of course, that tends to undermine the legitimate efforts to do good science and try to understand the truth of the matter. So literally, religion has been used by the truth embargo as a way to undermine the validity and the efforts of these people. So I'm very sensitive to going there. Look, there's 7 billion people on the planet. At any given time, there's some people doing all kinds of things. So what? Will the human race create a religion around extraterrestrials? No, it won't. It hasn't. Not in the modern era. In the ancient era, it's very possible.
Okay.
But this isn't 4,000 years ago. This isn't 2,000 years ago. We are a fully developed global technological society. And so we're not going to easily suddenly decide. We're not going to create cargo cults or start building saucer-shaped temples, though somebody will try it, right? Somebody will do that. So what? One of the problems in the modern world is we know too much. In other words, we got a pretty good idea what's going on, but over here somewhere, there's 86 people that do something. And we zero in on that and go, oh, wow, what's going to happen there? It's a big deal. No, it's not. Right? It's not a big deal. There's a lot of people doing lots of stuff all the time. So what? You've got to look at the larger picture. Where are we going as a human race? Where are we going as a nation? How are we interacting with this thing? And not stop paying so much attention to what individual people do. It's like I turn on the news, and this person murdered that person, and then that person murdered this person. And so it's like 8 or 9 murders. And so you would think that the most important thing in the world is 8 murders that took place last week. No, it's not. And so this is a real dilemma that we have. We're driving ourselves crazy by literally looking at the granular stuff that's going on while completely ignoring the macroscopic things that are happening that threaten all of us. In other words, I really want to know if somebody killed somebody at a 7-Eleven last month, but I don't want to know anything about the nuclear proliferation going on between the United States and Russia. That's what drives me crazy. What can I do? I turn the news off? I probably should. But somewhere in there, they'll have something important that I want to know. But this is a problem across the board. We are obsessing with limited, small examples of human behavior while not paying attention to the larger conduct of human behavior and our larger decisions. We've gone microscopic. We need to go macroscopic. We're getting into some woods here, I can say that. But
I like the woods, because one would say you have to go within. You have to tend your own garden. You can't do anything by not working on a local level. You know, that's why everything changes here. And to what you said about it being paid attention to, but with no evidence and therefore not being studied, dark matter, dark energy. We have way more evidence that there is UFOs and something flying around our skies than we do for the result of dark energy or dark matter, yet billions of dollars are funneled into that research to
Well,
discover
it's an area of science. They're studying
Well,
it.
it is, but it's still, the scientists still have faith, like a religion does, just like we all have faith that UFOs are correct, and you have faith that our government will tell us that that's what's going on.
We're still chasing Newtonian physics, right? And when it's like
There's a lot of,
we need this paradigm to change a bit. I tried to have this conversation at like some drinks party back in Canada a long time ago, and my buddy laughed in my face because I was like, hey, like gravity is, we know something's there, but we just haven't fully proven it yet. You know, it's not fully. And he's like, what are you talking? I was just like, frig, like there's just, I'm trying to say that they're trying to find the real force behind it still, and they're linking into this, linking to that. Yeah,
it's the law of density. That's it. That's it. It explains 100% of it.
There's
and you know where that does work? On a flat Earth model. Darcy, we're gonna wrap it there. So on a flat Earth note, we're gonna wrap it there. It's law of density. Gravity is a myth. Stephen Bassett, thank you so much, man. We're going to link all the ways to find you in the show notes. Of course, you guys check out YouTube. Check out media at occultjourneys.com. That's where we can be emailed at. If you've got any questions for any of us guys or anything else, just let us know there. And then, Darcy Ware, dude, thank you so much, man. Tell us about your movie again and where they can find it.
Oh, yeah. Secret Space UFOs Part 1. Check that out. It's a series. I, have Luna Incognita, who's a good friend of mine now, Carrie Martinuk, who worked on that with me. It's real history, real events in space and NASA-related cover-ups, so check it out.
Hell yeah.
And where can we find your stuff, Steve? Please, and thank you.
Where's your show at, man?
I don't. Well, I don't have it underway yet. It's still in what I call the opening stage. It's not developed. Doesn't matter. Look, my website is paradigmresearchgroup.org. Follow me on Twitter, Paradigm Research Group. Follow me on Facebook. Gentlemen, my reality has been thoroughly expanded over the last 2 hours.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to go take a Xanax, I think.
And to that note, I am Brandon Thomas with Expanding Reality Podcast. You guys can find it anywhere you find podcasts, YouTube, expandingrealitypodcast.com, all that good stuff. Go check it out. Go check out our conversation on that show. That was a lot of fun. Stevie B, Darcy Weir, good to see you guys, man. Thank y'all so much.
All right. Okay. Later.
Good night, brother.
Wait a minute. I have an ET devotion service I need to get to right now. I've got to
get it, brother. Peace be the journey. Peace be the journey. Shalom.
Worship the right ET for me.
All right. Yes. Thank y'all so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
Night, buddy. Woof.
Watch more podcast clips now on our YouTube channel. Go to Livewire Podcast Clips and watch more great podcast videos just like this one.